Welcome to Kyle and Nick on Film. Today we're doing another Patreon selection.
Yeah,
another
thanks for
first-time
Patreon.
watch for me.
Yeah. Is it first time watching this?
First time watching me. I always confused
God.
today's film with Street Fighter because they're both kind of like cheesy 90s
Not if you're
films that really
over.
missed out on what they were trying to do source-wise.
Okay.
So,
All right, we're going to talk about another 90s comic book adaptation. The success of Batman 1989 kicked off just a flood of action superhero movies from the mid-90s, and we'll get a little bit of tone and theme and all that stuff in the 90s. And let's talk about everybody's favorite fascist, Judge Dredd.
yeah, the Stopper My Mom Will Shoot of Sylvester Stallone comic book films.
Right, let's do it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and excuse my voice, I've been working on a cold since 1995. So, all right, yeah, thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching, and for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Another way you can support the show, hit the like, subscribe button right there, and tell your friends about the show as well. It's a little thing you can do, but it's a big thing for us. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. You better believe we did watch the Oscars. And also check out the webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about what kind of would be regarded as a cult film from the 90s, Judge Dredd.
Yeah, so due to building crime rates in the future, a group of super cops known as judges now police the society, offering justice and punishment in equal measure. When Judge Joseph Dredd, the most famous of these judges, is framed and sent to the wastelands, he's forced to team with a petty criminal in order to get back home and clear his name.
Okay, so Judge Dredd was created by Wagner. I can't remember his first name. He comes from across the pond in Britain. Hello, guys. It was very hard to get a copy of Judge Dredd in the 90s or early 80s because of the accessibility. Until he got his own comic book in 1990, where distribution, I think Diamond Distribution, can get a little bit of copies in the comic book store. So for us, it was a very kind of like, I've heard about him, I don't really know about him, but the success of Rocketeer and the made comic books of that kind of catapulted Judge Dredd to his comic books coming over here as well. So I got a little bit of introduction of Judge Dredd, and then 2 years later, boom, this movie comes out. I was like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Now we know because of the success of superhero movies from Batman, everybody wanted to latch on to obscure independent comic book films, movies, and make them to the films. You have like Judge Dredd, Phantom, Crow, and all these kind of movies.
Yeah, they were all that mid-budget kind of thing where it was like, we can try and spawn off of this. We don't have a Batman, but we have kind of what we can afford to do with the time period. I had a couple issues with some comic books with Judge Dredd in my personal collection. I was never an avid collector, but I did kind of peruse through the stacks and pick out the front
It's a
copies.
wonderful history of the making of Judge Dredd. We just don't have enough time to get into the orientations and the creations of the character because we're going to have to talk about the movie.
Yeah.
But it's a very fascinating thing that the guy was obsessed with like Dirty Harry movies, and you want to make a futuristic Dirty Harry kind of a thing. So.
Yeah, and so, of course, you got Danny Cannon directing this film.
Yeah.
He's most well known from me because he directed the sequel to I Know What You Did Last Summer called I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. A movie that is altogether worse than the original, but I still kind of prefer it.
Didn't it retain some of the people from the...
A couple survivors showed up, but then you also get Mekhi Phifer, and he gets hooked up into the chef's table there.
I was working the video store. I was working the video store when that came out.
Oh, and Jack Black in Dreads.
Yeah.
So he had directed that film. He also directed a notable soccer film called Goal about 10 years ago that actually got to some critical acclaim.
Okay.
Danny Cannon's always been a lifelong fan of Judge Dredd as a character, so he was picked. It was kind of like this idea of, well, we really got somebody who's a fan of this instead of just some guy who we can get to direct the film, because I know that there was a lot of bandied around names of directors who just had no connection to the property.
Right.
And so while Cannon didn't have a ton of big budget experience, he had made a couple of smaller films that had been quite successful critically. So
Okay, so just to round off your little Wikipedia Google search, it stars Sylvester Stallone. This is Sylvester Stallone in the mid-90s where his stock is kind of taking a dive.
Yeah.
After the 80s, it's pretty much when we're kind of done with you. But he was looking for small projects to get back into the kind of the action star. This is kind of before Cliffhanger, which kind of started. This was there's another one. Remember, he was in the tunnel with the light, Daylight. Or something.
Daylight, yeah.
Yeah. And he did Assassins with. So he's kind of searching for another project to kind of launch his career, but it really kind of just kind of getting lower and lower. I can understand why he wanted to latch on to Judge Dredd, But we're going to talk about if it was a right choice for him or something like that. So another things about cult classics is where's the flaws. It's kind of interesting to talk about, even though it's kind of entertaining to still watch.
Yeah, and you can see that there's some mixed reaction as to what Sylvester Stallone's background with Judge Dredd was going in, because some people had said that he had been quoted as saying he'd never heard of the character, didn't know anything about it, but then he'd also mentioned that he was a big fan of the books when he read them. So I don't know if he read them just after being in the film and kind of realized what was going on. He saw the film as being kind of an action comedy, whereas Cannon, the director, and the screenwriters, who were William Wisher and Stephen E. D'Souza, who are pretty notable screenwriters, both saw a dark, serious, little bit of satire, kind of in the vein of like a darker RoboCop, if you will, where we get a little bit, that satire is a bit harsher than what it was comedic in RoboCop.
And that's different questions and avenues that you like to take with this movie, because the movie's tone and theme doesn't really match. In the mid-90s, after Batman Returns, movie producers is like, we have to change kind of the tone of superhero movies. It was a little too dark, unsuccessful, and just the way Batman Returns was received, how it was almost like a horror movie, and it wasn't really marketed to kids. People thought, well, you have to brighten up every story, you have to sell it, you have to make it funny, you have to have it for the kids friendly, every superhero movie. And this kind of gets caught in the cogs of that kind of formula that was permanent after Batman Returns of this movie, which the whole theme of this book everybody enjoys is dystopia. It's never going to be a happy ending, and you have Judge Dredd just shoot first and ask questions later kind of a guy. Where you have, all of a sudden we have to like, well, Rob Schneider is the hottest ticket right now. Let's put him in there, let's have a couple jokes and kind of lighten up the tension.
Yeah, do you remember when Rob Schneider was like not embarrassing? I mean, he was embarrassing, but like in the right way.
It's one joke. He's got one joke.
Yeah.
Right. It's just one joke. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I'm an idiot, but like you're a bigger idiot. I know Joe Pesci had turned down the role of Fergie, who was the criminal that Rob Schneider ended up playing. That would have been an interesting take. I feel like it might have been closer to the darkness, because I feel like Pesci can play in the darkness a bit while he's kind of doing comedy stuff.
Now, the second taboo, the one that really scorches Judge Dredd fans, is you see a lot more of Sylvester Stallone with his helmet off than on. And it's almost a thing that people appreciate, including me, that the anonymity, the you don't see the face of justice at all. In the comic books, they intentionally never draw his face. It's kind of like this Mandalorian thing. You never see who it really is. And in this movie, that really scorches a lot of hardcore fans, is you constantly see Judge Dredd without his helmet on.
Yeah, and it's a lot. Like, it's not just like, he takes it off.
And I wonder
once.
if that's Sylvester Stallone, like, no way, man.
I guarantee you we have a star in this movie, so you're going to take the helmet off. I guarantee you. That's what surprises me so much about things like Mandalorian, but it's probably because they always have a stunt actor under there. That was one of the things that in the 2012 iteration, the reboot of the film that Alex Garland had written, was a big deal, was that he was under the mask. Carl Urban wears the mask the whole film. Whereas this one, it's off quite a bit. And I know that's... I don't feel like it's detrimental to the character in a film. As far as an adaptation goes, it does miss the mark, because even I think in the comic books, when he takes off the mask once, there's like a censored bar over the head.
Yep.
Like you're not even allowed to see it as viewers of the book.
Or he's taking a shower and he's...
Yep, it's always kind of, he's the Mr. Wilson of police officers, where he's just always behind that fence.
Yeah. Now, the second taboo, and I talked about it, is tone matches theme. Everybody wanted kind of like The Crow, where Crow is a love story. There is nice softness to it, but the entire thing is never going to be a fulfilling, happy story to it. And it's the kind of this, let's put color into it. Let's have comedy. Let's have a love interest. Let's, and let's get to the backstory of him actually just being a clone, and then his brother Rico, where I think, people went back and like, no, let's erase that. I'm criticizing it, but there are actually some things they get right about it that I really enjoy. Like, there's a mystery component to it. There's everybody has a disdain for Dredd. He's the greatest cop, and he's the most brutal cop, and even the people around him hate him.
Yeah. And Stallone does bring an intensity to the character.
Yeah.
It's a bit goofy, but at the same time, when he said it, I did kind of cheer a little bit. Emotionally inside, I was invested. This movie was a lot more fun than I think I'd given it credit for, because, like I said, I kind of always confused it with Street Fighter, a movie that I absolutely loathe. Where this is actually more in line with maybe like the Super Mario Brothers movie from the 90s, where like it's bad. I understand it's bad, but it is wholly entertaining from beginning to end. I think the animatronic work on that robot is awesome. I think that thing is really creepy.
The android cops that before they were used humans.
Yeah, I thought that thing was great. I thought some of the effects work was pretty nice. I think the CGI, while looking dated, actually might make it look better, because it kind of plays into, again, that kind of cheap sense of everything.
It has all the mixture of a great cult classics. There's so many flaws to it. There's so things that were supposed to be serious that you kind of laugh at now. But that's kind of the charm of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's missteps in the screenwriting. There's missteps in the character work. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but I will say
clunky,
that what the film has on display was still a rollicking kind of time, where I was still invested wholly throughout. There's always something happening that is developing the nature of the story. Sure, it plays by the numbers, and it makes the cardinal sin, I feel, of a lot of these films, where you decide for your first movie to basically just like remove all the things that make them who they are. It's kind of like how in Thor for Marvel, they took him out of Asgard for the first movie for cost reasons.
For like 80% of the time, right?
Yes, he was out of Asgard for 80% of his own movie, when that's what you'd want to see in the first film. Take him out in the second film. You know, I think what works about like Iron Man 3 is that's finally when we get a Tony Stark film beyond being an Iron Man movie, is we're spending time with him without the costume. But that's because we've had 2-3 films beforehand that had him in the costume. With Judge Dredd, we're having him getting framed, sent to the wastelands, having to return home. We don't really get him doing the judge thing at all.
He doesn't do very much patrol, which is 90% of the action of the movie, where he goes into places where people fear to judge.
Yeah. It makes that sin in a lot of ways how, like even just the most recent Mortal Kombat film. Mortal Kombat's about the tournament, and they spend that whole film getting ready for the tournament and then not doing the tournament. And it's like, it's a whole teaser for the next movie. And that's kind of how this film felt as a Judge Dredd movie. Now, what it is, I think is still pretty fun, but they make some really distinctive,
try to time the furnace
decisions.
And everything. But the beginning of the movie, it has this boom, 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 which is a very 80s, like, Terminator kind of a thing with everything is just red. And I immediately forget that, oh my God, we're going to go away from this couple minutes beginning of the movie. Right.
Yeah. I didn't really know where we were heading for most of that film. I was invested in certain elements of the film. Actually, the film has a lot of weird like connections to David Lynch, because you have Jürgen Prochnow, who was in like Twin Peaks the movie, Joan Chen, who was on Twin Peaks, Balthazar Getty appears in the film at the beginning. He's in Lost Highway. There's a bunch of people that have kind of like fittered through David Lynch work here. I was also really surprised to see James Remar in kind of a cameo appearance at the beginning as one of the criminals. You also get a little bit of a kind of the Thing reference, because you have Adrienne Barbeau voicing the Hall of Justice computer system.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, and then that opening with James Earl Jones, where he narrates the opening of the film and then never speaks again.
And then you have the great Max von Sydow.
Yeah, imagine a world, Max von Sydow having a scene with Rob Schneider. It happens, and it happens in this film, and we can never look past it now.
No, right.
The seventh seal of the animal.
Right. So for all the kind of, like I said with cult classics, for all the criticisms, it's still kind of an entertaining kind of a movie to invest, even though it does like break all the things that you want to do with your character. What do you think of our take of Judge Dredd? Yeah, thank you so much for Tyler Prohl for nominating this film for us to talk about. I love Tyler's picks, because there's always like a cult classic that I've seen but not in a long time, or one that I just flat out haven't but meant to. Yeah. We're starting to get a real good sense of Tyler's cult classic kind of love, and some of his picks don't work for me, and some of them do, and I really appreciate getting a chance. No, we're getting totally what I get your Cadillac, Tyler. I really dig it. Yep, I'll take your 90s Stallone misfires. I'll take those. Let us know your thoughts on the film down below in the comments section. Do you agree with Tyler? Do you agree with us? What do you think about the movie? Be the judge, jury, and executioner of it. Yeah. Would you like to have seen Stallone return for a Judge Dredd 2? Do you think they could have done a sequel or a follow-up? Or are you happy with the route they took? Dredd. We've been waiting for it since 2012 or what? 2012, I believe, yeah. So, my God. Let us know all those thoughts down there. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to be a patron, like Nick had mentioned, the link's down in the description to join Patreon. At $5 and up per month, you can help nominate the films that we talk about throughout the show. Or you can just join for $1 and get access to Picks with Kyle and Nick, The Road to De Palma, early access to any of our episodes that get finished before release date will show up on there. So lots of cool stuff. And that goes as low as $1. So it's easy to support independent critics like us. Yes, exactly. You can also find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com. You can find my show, The St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts, and now it's on Amazon Radio.